Good evening, CPP families. Thank you for joining us tonight. This is our first of 3 town hall meetings. We are excited to share with you our updates on our reopening plan. And we'll be taking questions from you this evening in our chat. So please feel free to ask any question that you need to have answered. You will see a sign that comes up that looks like your question has been dismissed, but please know that they have not been dismissed and that we're collecting them and that they will be answered throughout the evening. I'm going to begin by sharing my screen with you so we can get started. So it's important for us to let you know that we have 2 critical things to offer our families this fall. We want them to receive the best education they have in the safest environment possible, whether they are in our nest or when they're taking flight. These 2 things are things that we're committed to and confident in being able to share with you and your kids this fall. These are the New York State guidance categories that had to be included in our school reopening plan. Our school reopening plan was sent in at the end of July and it was accepted. In each of these areas, we had to make sure that we were meeting the guidelines put out by New York State Education Department and also the New York State Department of Health. And we were able to meet those needs through our 2 models. Our virtual model 100% and our AB model. Through our 3 surveys, we were able to gain a lot of information from our families on what they really wanted to see happen in the fall under the guidelines, again, that we have to be under per New York State and the Department of Health. So you'll see from our commitment form, grades K to 5 learning options, about 19% of our families went with the 100% virtual remote learning, and about 81% are coming back to us in that hybrid model of 2 days and 3 days. And this is at grades K through 5. And you'll see at 6 through 12, it's just a little less for remote learning. About 16% of our students will be joining us remotely, and 84% will be in person. I know that many of you have seen this graphic before, but I think it's a nice way for us to be able to share with you what you are looking at in terms of your cohorts. So if you end up having a student in group A, your student will always come to school on Monday and Tuesday. And if you're in cohort B, your student will always come to school on Thursday and Friday. And the 100% virtual kids will be in class every day virtually, Monday through Friday. It's important for you to know that even though your kids are not in the building physically, if you're in cohort A, Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday, we still expect and need your students to attend class on those days. So really, even though it looks as if you're only in school for 2 days, you will be in school for 5 each week. Some of the things we'd like to make sure happen in our remote learning communities are on this screen, and I will give you some time to read through these, but I want to keep talking so you understand what we're looking at. We want our teachers to provide instruction that's 2-way, that's real time, and that it's live. So whether you're in person or at home, you'll be able to participate in class. Those of our students who are at home will be able to use the chat function. They'll be able to raise their hand. They'll be unmuted by their teacher. So they'll be a part of their class with the students who are in person. We're asking that our teachers utilize the same curriculum with students who attend in person and remotely. They're going to utilize strategies to engage students in both environments. We want to make sure that our communication is consistent. So you'll hear from teachers through Google Meet. You'll hear from them through email and through phone messages. We're also looking to make sure that our grading will be consistent, whether the students are in remote or in person. And I'll just give you a minute to read through the rest of the slide. If you'd like to ask a question, at the bottom of your screen, there's a Q&A icon. Click on that and you can type your question into the panel and our team will capture that so we're ready to respond to your questions. You'll hear me say multiple times this evening that our student support, such as academic intervention services, special education services, ELL services, and counseling will be provided remotely and during in-person opportunities. We want to make sure that you know that those things are available for your kids regardless of which model you chose. So what do we need from our students? Whether you're remote learners, we need you to join in your classes via Google Classroom. We need you to be part of your instruction every day. We will make sure that there are breaks and movement, whether you're in person or not. We'll be following our district's code of conduct, including the dress code, whether you're home or in school. And we'll be using features of our technology platforms to engage students in discussion, in class activities. I think it's important here for families to know that this fall is going to look very different from what it looked like in the spring. In the spring, our guidance from New York State was very clear that no harm could come to kids after March 13th, meaning that we all needed to figure out what being home meant in the spring. So if students attended their Google Classrooms, that was great. If they didn't, it was okay. If they created or completed their work in the evenings or on weekends, all of those things were okay. The guidance has changed. This fall, families and students are being required to attend school every day. There's an attendance and a chronic absenteeism section in the guidance document. And I want to talk to you a little bit about that. So in the hybrid model or the remote learning model, attendance will be taken every day. So in grades K through 5, students will log into their Google Meets and attendance will be taken one time per day. The guidance says that there needs to be one contact per day. In grades 6 through 12, we'll take attendance by class period. So each period your student is to attend, attendance will be taken. And both of those are very similar to the ways we've taken attendance in the past. Some alternatives for students with inadequate connectivity, they'll connect with a student ally, and we'll have students connected to a student ally in the building. They will call the homes each day and make a point of contact with the student to make sure that they have what they need for class that day. Students may also call into their scheduled Google Meets so that they are there to listen to the instruction as well. And we'll use School Tool to keep families updated and to keep track of our attendance. So I'm going to ask Carrie, our Assistant Superintendent for Elementary Education, if there are any questions about how we're getting started or our models. Is there anything yet, Carrie, that we can talk through?
Sure. Some questions relative to scheduling. On the dates the children are home, parents need to know if the online classes will be at certain times.
So I'm actually going to move into the next slides then, because they will share that information so families can see the times.
So a lot of the questions are on that, are exactly on what the schedule will look like.
Okay, great. We'll keep going then. So teaching and learning for grades K through 5. Our team of teachers and administrators that worked on this really wanted to make sure that families understood that their students are not going to be sitting in front of a screen from 8 to 3. So they worked really hard to create schedules where there will be consistent times for ELA and math blocks, for social studies science, for specials, and I'm going to share them with you here. We wanted to make sure that we were very mindful of the amount of time that a student would be sitting based on their age and their grade level. So I'm going to share these with you so you can see if you have a student in K through 5, you'll be able to see what will be expected of them each day. And I'll walk through what these daily times look like. So for example, if you're in kindergarten, throughout the course of the day, you're going to have about 2 hours of direct remote learning. Those 2 hours will not necessarily be consecutive time. So each day you will have an ELA block you'll need to sign in for, a math block that you would need to sign in for. Those will be consistent. And then at the bottom, you'll see a bullet that just states that you would have a certain amount of remote independent work. And these are for the students that are 100% virtual, but they're also for the students in the A/B block on the 3 days that they're not present for school. We wanted to show what a classroom is going to look like at the elementary level. So we took a newer space that's been renovated and a classroom that hasn't been renovated yet, just so you can see what social distancing looks like in the classrooms. Again, there's 6 feet to the front and back and on both sides for our kids. Now, everyone has wondered, what does Wednesday look like? So for our elementary kids, Wednesday is going to start at 8:30 and it'll end around noon. And there's going to be a combination of things happening throughout the day, depending on what grade level you're in. So there could be AIS blocks happening. There could be specials happening, individual support, counseling, some related service. We want students to be able to review and practice what they've learned throughout the week. And there will be time for related arts, what our elementary students call their specials. I think it's important for our families to know, we have around 900 families in our district who receive special education services. Any student that qualifies for and receives these services, they will have them provided whether they're in the hybrid learning model or whether they're in the remote learning model. They may look different for each student, but Jennifer Batzing, our director of PPS, and her team are working hard with individual families to make these services work. PPS is also working with transportation and will be calling families to discuss their individual transportation needs. And our CSE meetings are going to be held virtually until January of 2021. I'm going to move into teaching and learning for grades 6 through 12. Start with the middle school. And this is for the in-person AB schedule. We were able to maintain our middle years program curriculum and courses. We were able to maintain the middle school models of teams and houses. At the middle school level, students are going to be cohorted. So students will be in class together, and really their teachers are going to move. At the middle school level, this is possible because middle school students themselves take the same classes. So we're able to move teachers and houses. and across grade levels to be able to meet their students, so the students won't be traveling. Students are going to pre-order their lunches and pick them up in the cafeteria, and they will eat socially distanced in classrooms and in the cafeteria. We also think that these groupings of cohorts will help them maintain their peer relationships when they're only able to see them for 2 days a week. This is what a new classroom and an older classroom look like socially distanced at the middle school. So at the middle school, if you're remote learning, a part of that community, we still want you to participate fully in the in-nest classes. Learning and support, connection with your teachers, connection with your peers, that will all still happen whether you're home or not. And we want to make sure that there's a continuity of learning. So Monday and Tuesday are not going to be repeated on Thursday and Friday. Our education will just keep rolling day to day as if we were all there in person every day. And our counselors and social workers and our social emotional learning staff will still be there to support our students and their families through related services with teletherapy and digital resources in person and through this remote learning. At the high school, if you're in the AB model, there is a different setup. We still will run the 9-period day, the same as middle school. We've added a minute in between passing time. So students at the high school will change classes. They will move throughout their day. There isn't a way to cohort high school students based on the courses that they take. After 9th grade, really 10th and 11th and 12th grade, students have such personalized course offerings that it's hard to cohort kids in those grade levels. So they will pass between periods and go to their next classrooms. Lunch will be eaten in the cafeteria and a variety of other locations. Again, making sure that we're meeting the social distancing requirements. And teachers will work to prepare students for their virtual time and let them know what are the expectations for when you're not here, what's the structures, what materials will you need. And we'll continue those 5 days of new instruction and practice and reinforcement. Another thing that we were able to maintain are our IB, SUPA, ACE, and AP courses. And that allows our students in 11th and 12th grade to still be able to work toward earning some credit for college. In addition, Robin Sheehan, the executive principal, and her team were able to maintain elective opportunities for our students, which is really important for engagement at our high school level. So at the high school level, that remote learning community is going to look very similar to what I explained for middle school. There will be a daily class schedule to follow. Attendance will be taken in each period. We'll make sure that a student's accommodations are being met. And there will be support through teletherapy. I wanted to show you a little different version for high school. You'll see on the left what a classroom looked like prior to March and what it will look like this fall. So you'll see in all 3 of these levels, the way we've social distanced with the 6 feet, we're basically cutting our classroom size and our the amount of students that will be in the building at one time almost into a third. So we're able to come back because we're able to do that. So what does Wednesday look like for a middle school and a high school student? In the morning, we're going to have teachers working together to create the materials that students will need each week to go home for their 3 days. So on Tuesdays and Fridays, we'll be ready to share materials with students who have weak internet connection or no internet connection. They'll have time to decide what will be happening for the next week for those students who are on the in the remote learning cycle of the week. From 10:30 to 2:55, we'll still have our 9-period day, and the classes will just be shortened to 25 minutes. In terms of special education services, whether you're in elementary school, middle school, or high school, related services such as OT, PT, and speech and counseling will be provided in both the hybrid learning model and in the remote learning model. We're going to continue to use Google Meet as our platform for teletherapy. And you'll see a combination of push in and pull out services for students. Carrie, I think this might be another good time maybe to stop and take some questions about instruction.
Sure. One question regarding the AB model: will families have an opportunity to communicate which days would work best for their children due to daycare needs?
So right now, our whether you're in cohort A or cohort B is driven by transportation. And I'm going to share a slide in a few minutes here that shows exactly why that's the determining factor. Once those students are placed in AB, we will do our best to work with families to meet their needs around childcare. But the first level that we need to go through and the first exercise that we've needed to go through is based on transportation and having the ability to get students to school on time.
Ready for another question?
Yeah.
Okay. With remote learning, will the kids need to be online during the school hours of the day? I think we answered that with some of the scheduling slides.
Yeah, so at the elementary level, students will be required to log in during the time frames that each of their direct instruction blocks are. And at middle school and high school, they will log in each day during their class period. So for example, if I had English first period, I would need to be logged into my class. But if I had a study hall second period, I would not be logging into any class. So it'll be dependent on your student's schedule when they need to be logged in during the day.
Okay, a question about, will the teacher be the same for in-person as well as remotely?
Yes, our teachers will have the same classroom students, regardless of if they're A, B, or in the 100% virtual model. So that cohort of kids will be together with their teacher each period or each block of time.
A question for teaching and learning on how will hands-on BOCES classes be handled? If we have no or poor internet service, what does the student do during the 3 days per week that they are off-site?
Okay, I'll start with the BOCES programs. Right now, students who attend CTE at BOCES, they will follow our schedule. So right now they'll be going 2 days a week. We are trying to get them there 4 days a week. So Mrs. Sheehan and her team again at the high school will be reaching out to families who have students enrolled in CTE classes to look at some transportation options for getting them there 4 days a week. And the second half of that question again, sorry, Carrie.
That's okay. What will students do on the 3 days per week that they are off-site?
If they have no internet?
Mm-hmm.
So we're looking at a few different options for that, and you'll see that on a slide in a few slides ahead about connectivity. So we're going to be working with families to get them connected. We're going to be loading students with work either through uploading information or work to their Chromebooks or laptops. We'll be providing flash drives, some paper, but not paper packets like you saw in the spring. And we're really working hard to get them connected in some way. And again, any family or student that has a phone can dial into their classes at any time. I think I'm going to move on and we'll take some questions again in a minute. So social emotional wellness of our students coming back to school are really critical. You know, we've had students since March that have really suffered without having the connection to their peers and to their teachers at school. And we've continued to work with those students. Our school counselors, school social workers, even our teachers and TAs have continued to make connections with students who've needed us over this last few months. The other half of this and the other side of this are there are students that will be coming back this fall who are anxious and nervous about the safety features, and we want to make sure that we can meet their needs as well. So we're spending time on some strategies to integrate into our classrooms, whether they're skill building or relationship strengthening, so that we have those opportunities for kids when we see them again this fall. I'm going to move into some technology and connectivity, and this information was pulled from your commitment forms that you shared. So you'll see in grades K through 5 by building, the red is no service, the purple means that they have a cell phone that works, and then yellow, weak, and green, good. The numbers ended up being a little bit less than we thought in terms of no service, which for us gives us some hope that we will be able to actually provide families with what they need, whether they're in the no service areas or not. So we have some creative ideas to work with them. See the same in grades 6 through 12 at the high school and the high school learning center and the middle school. Our director of technology was able to pull together kind of like a chart for us that has the students that wrote back. If you see the purple dots on this screen, that meant that the internet was not available. The reddish color was no subscription at this time. The orangish color. So what we can do now, we can go into our school district and we can figure out where hotspots would work for families. We can figure out how to connect families to some free Wi-Fi locations. And we'll continue to work with each family individually on how to get them connected. It won't be perfect, and we know none of this will be perfect, but we're going to do the best we can to get our families connected. So how are we addressing this? I mentioned before some flash drives, some downloading of work. So for example, if you open something in Google Classroom before you leave the building, you'll be able to work on it from home. You do want families to utilize the phone call option for logging into their classrooms. And that student learning ally will become very important to those families with no internet connection. So they'll be assigned to learning, a learning ally, and they'll check in for them, not just for attendance purposes, that's one of the reasons, but the other is to make sure that that student has what they need throughout the day, or if they need a specific teacher to contact them back throughout the day to make sure they're ready for those days when they are not in person. Maybe this is another good time, Carrie, to stop and talk about connectivity or learning, teaching and learning.
Sure. A question about when will AB groups be announced?
So that's coming up soon. So actually our goal right now is to have the AB model announcements ready for you on Friday, this Friday. Again, we're going to try to be as flexible as possible in meeting the needs of our families, but transportation has to be available for those who need it, and that will drive who's in A and B. Before I move to that, I want to just finish or talk about our nutrition plan. So we will continue to feed families, whether you're in person or remotely. You'll still have the availability to have a 3-day meal pack or a 5-day meal pack that will be delivered on Wednesdays. The free and reduced lunch applications are on our website and ready. We'll also be mailing those home. And you may think it's funny to have Taco Day on this screen, but it was really part of the feedback that we received from families and from students that we make sure that Taco Day was available for both cohorts, whether you were in A or B. And it's good for us to all keep smiling during all of this. So we will make sure that we have tacos available for both cohort groups. So the last question Carrie just asked about cohort group announcements. They will be hopefully shared this Friday. That is our target date, and all buildings are working hard. Larry Eccleston, our Director of Transportation, and his team, this is all they have done every minute of every day since our commitment form closed on Tuesday.
So
I think
some questions about how will we be notified, A or B? So how should parents check to see if they are A or B on Friday?
I think we're still working on if it's going to be from building level principals or if it's a message from us telling families to look in School Tool, and it may be a combination of both of those things, but we will communicate out through our district communication how you would find that information and how that information would be shared with you on Friday. I think this graphic of transportation is super helpful. So when our transportation director has buses that can hold 66 to 72 passengers, and we have to meet the 6-foot distancing, we're able to basically put 1 student per seat. So for him, that's cutting the amount of riders almost to 1/3 on a bus. So each one of these seats has to be assigned one at a time, 1 student at a time. And you know, we have about 4,600 students in the district. So hand scheduling them 1 person at a time on a bus is very difficult for us. It's also been difficult for parents. We have in the past been able to meet the needs of transportation if you were going to one location on a Monday and a Tuesday, but had to go to a different location on a Wednesday or Thursday. Unfortunately, I think you saw in our commitment form, we're only able to do 1 morning pickup and 1 afternoon pickup based on this 6-foot requirement. So the guidelines really are dictating why we have to do this. For example, if my seat was row 3, seat 2 in a row, and I wasn't going to be there for 2 days a week, then that seat sits empty because it was assigned to me. And if I wanted to ride on a different bus, there aren't any empty seats for me. So there would not be a spot for me on another bus. So it's really important to understand what's driving those A, B, and also the need for 1 location for drop off and pickup. Not easy for families to navigate and not easy for us to be able to get our students there. Okay. So we're going to go into health and safety. Do we want to stop here again and answer some questions before we get into health and safety?
Sure. A question about clubs. How will clubs work? Will the clubs be meeting in Google Meet?
So right now we have an extracurricular committee working on this, and we're monitoring guidance from the state. So for example, if the club before was an athletics-based club or an intramural-based club, right now the guidance says that those cannot happen. However, if we were having a book club where there were 6 or 8 kids in the club and we can social distance those students, we will still offer that. So that committee is working on what extracurricular activities could look like for us in the fall, but right now there aren't choices out yet for students and families to choose from.
Question about sports. Will there be sports in the fall? And what about our students that are 100% virtual? Will they be able to join sports?
Right now, the target date for sports starting is September 21st, and fall registration will be at the end of this month. So we are prepared to move forward if we are allowed to have sports. Our director, athletic director, has worked with all of his coaches to make sure that they're ready for fall sports. Right now, though, if you look around, not just our state, but just in the United States in general, sports have not opened in too many locations. So we're just waiting to hear back if we're allowed to go forward on September 21st.
Okay, physical education. How will students virtually do PE class?
Again, they're joining in their periods. If they're assigned to period 4 PE, they'll be joining in and their teachers will be instructing them as if they were in a normal class. Elementary PE will happen as well, where students are logging in and participating with their teachers and with their other classmates. I do want to go back to the question about will students who are 100% virtual be allowed to participate in sports and extracurriculars, and the answer is yes, they can.
Okay, a question about pre-K. Is kindergarten the youngest age that is going to be in school? We are continually working with ProAction to still operate our Head Start pre-K classes in 4 of our elementary buildings. So we partner with ProAction to do that, and that is continuing right now. We are in that process. So we will still offer our pre-K Head Start classes as of now at 4 of our elementary schools. A question about cohort requests. If district transportation is not needed, is there an opportunity to request a cohort based on family needs?
So right now we're asking for us to be able to release the lists on Friday with your cohorts in them, the A or B cohort, and then we'll work from there. Because on the second layer, as I said, transportation is the first layer. The second layer is how many seats do I have available on an A schedule and a B schedule. So if there are 10 seats available in a 3rd grade classroom, then we need to make sure that we have 10 students in the A group and 10 in the B group. So it will just be a balancing act at that point, and we will do our best to meet families' needs after the release on Friday. Okay, I'm going to move forward into the health and safety aspect for reopening. So for facilities, cleaning procedures has come up in many of our questions. We want you to know that the guidance states clearly the continual process of cleaning. So our buildings will be cleaned 24/7. Students and teachers will see the presence of our custodial staff over and over throughout the day. One of the very clear guidelines is that students may not participate in cleaning. So we will not be asking students to do that. We will not be asking teachers to do that either. However, teachers do have the option for their rooms of asking for supplies to clean, and we will grant those if they want them and need them in their room. I'm going to talk about positive cases for COVID in a little bit, but in terms of cleaning procedures, any space where there has been contact with someone who has a positive case, again, this is a positive case, we'll let the space sit for 24 hours and then cleaning will begin. So at a minimum, once there's a positive case, the buildings or the space will be closed for 72 hours, but that is at the discretion of the Steuben County Department of Health. So we will work closely with them to know what needs to be closed, when it needs to be closed, and when it can reopen. We're also using some airless disinfectant sprayers They're efficient, and the time savings is worth us investing in these disinfectant sprayers. So cleaning happening all day long. So this next slide, this is, I think, the most important thing for families to walk away with this evening. Currently, the New York Department of Health has identified these 11 symptoms as COVID-19 symptoms. And the current guideline and recommendation is that if you have one of these symptoms, you cannot attend school. If you do have any of these symptoms, then you'll be sent home. And you need the following 3 things to return to school. You need written clearance from a doctor. You need a negative COVID test. And you need resolution of the symptoms. So I think this one is really hard to wrap your head around. You know, I think of students or staff who are migraine sufferers. Right now, the guidance says that if you have a headache at school, regardless of if it's something that's known to our nursing staff or to your primary care physician, that you still have to have the following 3 things: a written clearance from a doctor, a negative COVID test, and a resolution of the symptom. I'm just going to go back a second so you can see this list again. We know that this is going to be a challenge. We're going into flu season. We're going into allergy season. And at this time, if you have any of those symptoms, you need the following 3 things to return. And it doesn't matter if you're a student or a staff member. So in terms of testing and tracing and closure, we are not allowed to COVID test in our school. So if someone goes home with a symptom, they need to see their primary care physician. And if families don't have a primary care physician, the Department of Health will determine what location they should go to be tested. In terms of tracing, we'll work with the Department of Health. We'll provide them with names of students that may have been in contact and staff who may have been in contact with that person. But for us, HIPAA laws will still be enforced. So we won't be sharing the names of students or staff if they have a positive COVID test. And in terms of our closures, again, we're going to work with the Department of Health. They're going to determine what spaces need to be closed for how long, and we will notify families once we know what the recommendation is from the Department of Health. So I want to talk through just a few scenarios around health and safety. So if you have a child at school who has a fever, if they have chills or any of those symptoms that we talked about earlier, once that child is sent home, if you have other children in the schools, or if you have other family members or friends living with you, all of those people have to go home until there's a negative COVID test for that person. Not everyone in your family needs to be tested. Only the person with the actual symptoms has to be tested. And again, our Department of Health, our Steuben Department of Health is working hard with the State Department of Health to try to get some flexibility with that. But right now that is the guidance, and those are the rules that we have to follow to be able to open. In terms of screening, I want to make sure that you understand our process for screening. Right now, all staff members have to fill out the screening form that you see on the left-hand side of the screen to be able to enter the building. Families will have to fill out a similar screening process for their kids before they leave in the morning. So you'll see our School Point Stay Connected app on the bottom right-hand corner. That's the app that we will be more than likely using for our screening for families. So families are saying that their students meet these criteria and they're able to come to school. The second set of screening, or the second level of screening, is when you come in the door at school. There will be a temperature check for every student that enters the school every day. We're using thermal scanners to complete this. So students will just almost have to give like a fist bump to the machine. It'll have a light on it that turns red or green. If the light is green, they go through, go to class as normal, or to wherever they're going in the morning before they head to first period, or to their classroom at the elementary level. If they, for some reason, do have a fever, they'll be put in an isolation space, and the nurse will work through their protocols with them, and they will evaluate whether there is a fever or not. And if there is, the student will go home for the day, or the staff member will go home for the day. And again, from there, once they leave, they have to have those 3 pieces of information to be able to return to school. Face masks. I've probably received the most questions about face masks since we opened the ask@cpp.com email address. So I want to make sure everyone knows the current guidance for face masks. Face masks must be worn at all times on the bus. There is no time on the bus where a mask cannot be worn. It needs to be worn all the time. Face masks must be worn in our buildings. There are really only 2 times throughout the course of a day that a student would not have to have a mask on, and that is during lunch, once they're seated. And the other guidance says that they can take them off during direct instruction if the 6-foot social distancing requirement can be made, which is why we set up our classrooms the way you saw in the pictures earlier. However, it needs to be clear that if the teacher or a teaching assistant are moving about the room, then students still have to have their masks on. So even if there's direct instruction happening, if that 6-foot distancing requirement cannot be met, then they need to have their masks on. We are encouraging families to allow their kids to wear their masks all day. I've had many questions, can my student just wear their mask the whole day? They can. Teachers and staff and students can wear their masks all day. And really, these are the only times throughout the course of the day that they would not have to. In addition, I've had many questions about what's acceptable. Right now, we're following the guidance, and this language is from the guidance. Face mask can be cloth-based, homemade, sewn, quick cut, a bandana, gaiters, surgical masks. Those things have to cover their mouth and nose. The only thing right now that the guidance says you can't wear is a face shield. So you can wear a face shield and a bandana, but you cannot only wear a face shield. If there is a reason that there's a medical exemption for a face mask, students and their families must be able to provide medical documentation of this, and our head nurse and our district physician will also have to be in agreement with the exemption. So these will be very few and far between. Carrie, maybe a good place to stop to talk about some health related scenarios?
Sure. Is there any requirements for staff to be tested ahead of students starting?
No, the only time a staff or student has to be tested is if they're displaying one of those 11 symptoms.
Okay. What about kids with allergies? Do they need to be tested every time they have a runny nose or itchy throat?
So unfortunately, right now, the guidance is clear that if they have one of those 11 symptoms, they need to have those 3 things in place to return to school. Believe me, these are the same questions and frustrations that we have with the guidance. And our Steuben Department of Health is really working hard to try and get some leniency. If your doctor, primary care physician, has said that you have a runny nose because of allergies, or you have a migraine condition, that we can have some leniency there. But right now, there is not that leniency, and we would have to send the student home if the symptom is there.
Okay, if a student is in the blended model and is absent from school on their assigned days due to illness, but does log in virtually, will they be counted absent?
They will not. We will count them as present as long as we know that they're home because of an illness. We will be, if you're in that A-B model, we expect you to be there on your cohort days, whether it's A, Monday, Tuesday, or B, Thursday, Friday. But if you're homesick and still log in for your course, we will not mark you absent.
Okay, in health and safety, do masks need to be worn during recess time and during PE?
Currently, the guidance for recess is that they need to have them on if they can't keep the 6-foot social distancing requirement. So our recess teams and our PE teachers are working on activities outside that would allow for the distancing, but anytime it can't be maintained, then students will have to have their masks on.
Okay, some questions about will desks be cleaned between periods at the high school level?
So right now, the guidance does not say that that needs to happen. The guidance says that continual cleaning has to happen throughout the course of the day. And that is what we are guaranteeing, is that that cleaning continues throughout the course of the day.
Okay, that's most of our health and safety main questions. We'll clean up a couple of them and make sure that they're shared out.
Okay. So childcare is another huge concern that our families have, and I would be remiss not to mention it tonight. So I want to make sure that you understand we're working with childcare providers. We're working with businesses who contact us and talk to us about what they could do for their employees. We also want you to be aware of this phone number through ProAction, Child Care Aware. There are openings at childcare facilities right now throughout Steuben County. And if you contact this number, they would be able to help connect you to one of those locations. We know that this is the trickiest part, and please know, if we could have your students and your children back 5 days a week, we would. That is what we want. And this gets us one step closer, being able to come back and show that we can be successful in this hybrid model allows us each day to get closer to being able to come back 5 days a week. So our next steps, we've talked about athletics and extracurriculars. I want to let you know that there's building level committee work happening every week. What can we do for our specials? What can we do with related arts? What can we do to keep kids engaged in school, whether they're in the AB model or the virtual model? We're going to provide training for our staff and what effective remote learning looks like. We do not want and really cannot have a repeat of the spring. We have a team of our head nurse and our health and safety team, led by our assistant superintendent for personnel, Jeff DeLorme, creating videos, posters, trainings for students on how to wear your face mask appropriately, ways to continue to wash hands properly in the buildings, how to continue to maintain your safe social distancing. So all of those are being worked on right now, and your students and all staff will be trained on these on their first days of school. And we are also creating PD opportunities, professional development opportunities for families. We want families to feel comfortable with what Google Classroom is. So there'll be some opportunities for families to log in virtually and meet with some of our technology support teams and our teachers to learn a little bit more about what will be expected virtually, what it would look like from their end for this. So I think, Carrie, at this point, the presentation is over, so I just will take whatever questions we still have out there.
Okay, a lot of questions about band and chorus and what our plan is for band and chorus moving forward.
So the opportunity for band and chorus is still working, and we want to make sure that we still have those opportunities. But right now, all of them are looking a little different. They're looking more like small groups of instructions. You know, our band at the high school of 200, they won't be playing together in 200, but we are creating some smaller groups that will be able to meet so that we can still have those opportunities for band and chorus to continue at all 3 levels.
Okay, a question about classroom supplies. Sorry.
That's okay, classroom supplies. So we will not be sharing classroom supplies in any way that we can. So students will have individual materials provided to them.
Okay, and a question about a supply list from teachers. Will that have Kleenex and disinfectants on the list? Are we asking parents to supply that?
So students cannot bring disinfectant. The guidance is clear on that. They are not able to do that. If students want to bring their own personal tissues, they can, but they will be supplied by the school district as well.
Okay, science labs. If the student is doing 100% virtual class, then how will they do science lab work?
So right now, the guidance for science labs have changed dramatically from years in the past. Right now, the amount of minutes needed for science labs has decreased. The amount of lab in-person time has decreased, and the state is accepting all virtual labs. So our teachers are working at creating virtual lab opportunities for all kids. But their time in school, if they're in that A-B model, will be for lab time to happen. So those virtual kids will be there and watching, but virtual labs are acceptable per New York State for the fall.
For kids attending 100% off-site, how and when will students get their textbooks? And some questions about if a Chromebook or a device is needed.
So we are a one-to-one district, so all students will have access to a Chromebook or a laptop to bring home. Many of our students kept them from last year. Those who didn't, there will be plans released by their buildings for when pickup of those devices could happen. And the same thing will occur with textbooks and materials that families would need at home.
Some questions relative to attendance. Does my student just need to sign in once a day? How will attendance be taken?
So it depends on your level. If you're a K-5, attendance will be taken when you log in to one of your blocks of time, whether it's your ELA block or your math block, science, those. If you're at middle school or high school, attendance will be taken every period when you log into your Google Meet. If you do not have internet access, a student ally will be assigned to you, and that student ally will contact your student every day.
Okay, some questions about lunch and what that looks like. Will it be in the cafeteria? How will that work regarding supplies? I believe we covered some of that on the nutrition slide.
Sure. Lunch in each building will still happen. Students will still go to the cafeteria to get their lunch. Where they eat could be in multiple places. It could be in the cafeteria, it could be in classrooms. So there's been some creativity with keeping the social distancing mandates in place during lunch.
Question relative to health and safety concerning masks, and how will this work for our children that are hard of hearing or receive speech therapies?
I'm going to have our Director of Pupil Personnel Services, Jennifer Batzing, answer that question for you.
Yes, can you hear me okay?
Yep.
I can.
Okay. For students who are hard of hearing and for speech therapy services, we have placed some orders for some clear masks.
So they aren't shields, correct, Jen? They're just going to be masks that have the clear face in the front?
Correct. It's a clear mask that's been approved. It covers the nose and the mouth.
Thank you. So we're about 1 minute over, but Carrie, if there's a couple last minute questions, I'm happy to still answer those.
Okay, a lot of questions about exactly what the school times are for each level. We shared some what the block of time looks like for direct instruction and independent work time, but some questions on what the exact times are in the schedule.
So the times of day that school happens, they are actually going to remain the same. So whether you're elementary, middle, or high school, those time frames of the 7:45, 8 o'clock-ish time frame to 3 o'clock, depending on what level you're in, those are staying the same. Specifically at the elementary level, you will hear from them by grade level what those times are for logging into each block. Carrie, you want to talk a little bit about how they'll receive that information?
Sure. What we did is building principals met and really mapped out what it looks like to be a off-site learner, whether it's on the AB schedule or whether you're 100% remote learning, and tried to include breaks, tried to make a consistent start across the 6 buildings. So kindergarten will look the same time frames for all the kindergarten classes in all 6 buildings. First grade will look the same as far as time slots across first grade and all the 6 buildings. And really broke it down that we're on the same schedule. So math will be at the same time, ELA will be at the same time, lunch and recess, related arts. So we put that draft schedule together. We just shared that out with our elementary staff last Friday, and we're looking to finalize that after the course of these town hall meetings happen. So we should have that schedule finalized within the next couple of days. We put it out as a draft and are working through teachers to make sure that we can make it work. And then we will share out those timeframes with parents and families.
All right, Carrie, we'll take one more question.
Okay. I'm trying to pick one that I've seen a couple different times. Currently, this plan goes until January. What happens after that?
So that time frame for commitment form is basically just allowing families to stay in one model or the other for consistency's sake and for having a space available for your child, whether in the A or B model. So at that time, if we still have to be in one of these 2 models, then we'll have allow parents to choose again, whether they want to be virtual or AB. Our hope is that we don't have to do that again and that we can have all of our students back. But we are prepared to offer a second round of choosing a model. So we want to make sure that you know that we did capture all of the questions that you asked today. If we weren't able to answer them tonight, we will be putting out an FAQ. That will go out after our last town hall meeting. So potentially Friday would be the earliest that we would release that FAQ. And we would like you to keep asking your questions at ask@cppmail.com. They really do help us drive our work and making sure that we're getting this right, so that we have a successful opening this fall. So thank you so much for your time tonight. There's another town hall meeting tomorrow from noon to 1, and there will be the third one on Thursday evening from 6 to 7. We appreciate you. We know how hard this is. And we just want you to know that your CPP family cares so much about your students, and we want them back so that we can educate them and so we can make sure that they're safe while we're doing it. Have a great night, everyone. Thank you.